Our next study is by Hal on the Upanishads.
Thank you, Laura. As many know, the Upanishads are a central part of the ancient Indian scriptures. What is not as well known is that when we compare the Upanishads with the modern presentation of Theosophy, as recorded in the writings of H.P. Blavatsky, HPB, and William Q. Judge, we find in their basic ideas a remarkable similarity. In one sense, this should not be surprising since, as the Vedas themselves say, truth is one, though the wise call it by many names. Today, we would like to briefly explore the similarities between these two great bodies of wisdom. First, a little background on the nature of the Upanishads. The general term for the most sacred scriptures of the Hindu religion is the Vedas, which comes from the Sanskrit root vid, meaning to know. The Vedas consist of 4 great collections. Each collection has 2 parts. The first and largest part, called Karma Kanda, or the work part, consists of hymns and rituals and explanations of their meaning. The second part, called Jnana Kanda, or the knowledge part, addresses the fundamental questions of life. What is the source of life? What is death? Why are we here? What is real? What is not real? The second part of the Vedas is also called the Upanishad. The word is Sanskrit and means literally sitting down near, implying at the feet of an enlightened teacher to receive spiritual instruction. In ancient India, great teachers, masters, retired from worldly life and lived with their students in forest communities called ashrams, very often along the Ganges River. The teachers communicated to their students the wisdom that they had received from their teachers and that they had experienced for themselves in the depths of their consciousness. They taught through their example in daily living and through verbal instruction. The Upanishads are the record of these instructions. For thousands of years, they were transmitted from generation to generation orally and began to be written down about 1500 BCE, although this date varies according to different authorities. How many of these Upanishads once existed is unknown. Many have been lost, but it is generally agreed that 108 of them have been preserved. Of these, 10 are considered to be the principal Upanishads, mostly on the authority of Shankaracharya, the great teacher who in the 8th century ACE organized and codified all the sacred scriptures of Hinduism. They vary in length, the Upanishads, from as little as 2 or 3 pages to 30 or 40. Some are in verse, some in prose, some a mixture of the two. They vary in style and approach, sometimes within the same Upanishad. It may start off as a concrete narrative tale and switch to an abstract exposition of metaphysical realities. They are often in dialogue form. The settings and characters also vary. It may be a king asking for guidance from a sage, or a father teaching his son, or a daring teenager descending to the netherworld and demanding instruction from Yama, the king of death. Although many of them are missing, and much has been lost in the translation from the oral to the written word, the Upanishads remain one of the most complete and beautiful expressions of the eternal wisdom religion. In various places, the Upanishads speak of a certain deep and wonderful knowledge which above all things is to be sought. They say it is the knowledge through which the unheard is heard, the unthought is thought, the unknown is known. They say it is the knowledge through which, when it is known, the knower thereof knows everything else. Terms they use to refer to that mysterious knowledge are Brahma Vidya, Atma Vidya, and Gupta Vidya, all of which are synonyms for Theosophy, divine wisdom, Theosophy. In her great work, The Secret Doctrine, HPB fully endorses this idea when she defines the Upanishads as the conquest of ignorance by the revelation of secret spiritual knowledge. And she states that the Upanishads rest on the tenets of the secret doctrine. Let us now look more closely at just how these two great bodies of wisdom, the ancient Upanishads and modern Theosophy, are allied in their expression of the fundamental truths of life. The first fundamental idea of Theosophy is the unity of all life, that within all the many differing forms and shapes and ideas and beings and thoughts of life, there is the same one eternal, boundless, immutable, omnipresent reality, an absolute reality. All beings come from that. All beings return to that. All beings are that. Or, as the Upanishads say, Tat Tvam Asi, that thou art. This is the central idea of Theosophy, the most important idea, and so it is with the Upanishads as well. This idea threads its way and underlies them all. The ultimate reality is usually referred to as Brahman, or Atman, or the Self, or simply Tat, that. It pervades and transcends everything. It is the essence of everything. It cannot be described, defined, or limited, but it can be experienced, as the Katha Upanishad here says. The Supreme Self is beyond name and form, beyond the senses, inexhaustible, without beginning, without end, beyond time, space, and causality, eternal, immutable. Those who realize the self are forever free from the joys of death. The absolute reality, this self of all, is unchanging and incorruptible. Again from the Katha Upanishad. As the sun, who is the eye of the world, cannot be tainted by the defects in our eyes or by the objects it looks on, so the one self dwelling in all cannot be tainted by the evils of the world, for this self transcends all. This highest reality is the same in all beings, making us all one, as related in this delightful interchange from the Chandogya Upanishads. Shvetaketu was Uddalaka's son. When he was 12, his father said to him, "It is time for you to find a teacher, dear one, where no one in our family is a stranger to the spiritual life." So Shvetaketu went to a teacher and studied all the Vedas for 12 years. At the end of this time, he returned home proud of his intellectual knowledge. "You seem to be proud of this learning," said Uddalaka, "but did you ask your teacher for that spiritual wisdom which enables you to hear the unheard, think the unthought, and know the unknown?" "What is that wisdom, father?" asked the son. Uddalaka said to Shvetaketu, "As by knowing one lump of clay, dear one, we come to know all things made out of clay, that they differ only in name and form, while the stuff of which all are made is clay. As by knowing one gold nugget, dear one, we come to know all things made out of gold, that they differ only in name and form, while the stuff of which all are made is gold. As by knowing one tool of iron, dear one, we come to know all things made out of iron, that they differ only in name and form, while the stuff of which all are made is iron. So, through spiritual wisdom, dear one, we come to know that all of life is one. In the beginning was only being, one without a second. Out of himself he brought forth the cosmos and entered into everything in it. There is nothing that does not come from him. Of everything he is the inmost self. He is the truth. He is the self supreme. You are that, Svetakirtan. You are that. Thus we find the first fundamental idea of Theosophy, the unity of all life by way of a common absolute reality, clearly put forth in the Upanishads. Out of this first idea grows the second fundamental idea of Theosophy, the law of cycle. The absolute reality causes life in all its marvelous differentiations to appear and enjoy and suffer existence for a great period. That is the outbreathing of the absolute. Then, after an immense number of years, it causes all those many lives to disappear again into non-existence. That is the inbreathing of the absolute. Together, the outbreathing and inbreathing make up the great breath of the absolute, or the great cycle of life. And during the period of manifestation, when all things appear, they all copy that same cyclical pattern, which we see everywhere in life. From the Earth orbiting around the sun over and over again, to the electron orbiting around the nucleus over and over again. In our waking and sleeping and waking again, in our own outbreathing, inbreathing, and outbreathing again. Or, as said in the Svetasvatra Upanishad, the world is the wheel of God, turning round and round with all living creatures upon the wheel. The world is the river of God, flowing from him and flowing back to him. On this ever-revolving wheel of life, the individual self goes round and round through life after life, believing itself to be a separate creature until it sees its identity with the Lord and attains immortality in the indivisible whole. This passage speaks of the individual self. That's us and all other sentient beings. Speaks of this individual self going round and round through life after life. This is a reference to that particular aspect of the law of cycles we know as reincarnation, which is fundamental to both the Upanishads and Theosophy. It means simply that the immortal soul enters a body, experiences life through that body for a given period, learns and grows through that experience, then leaves that body behind, enjoys a period of rest, then that same immortal soul enters another body and repeats the cycle. These incarnations do not occur haphazardly, they occur according to law, the law of karma, or the law of cause and effect. It is the law that constantly and unerringly seeks to maintain and restore equilibrium in the universe. Actions that maintain harmony and balance receive their appropriate effects and are experienced as pleasure or joy. Actions that disrupt harmony and balance receive their appropriate effects and are experienced as pain or sorrow. Together, karma and reincarnation provide a satisfactory answer to many of the questions of life and serve as a solid foundation for ethical thought and action. With an understanding of these laws, we recognize that absolute justice rules the world, that we are responsible for whatever conditions of life we find ourselves in, that we are the author of our own lives, and that we are now writing chapters of our future actions, of our future editions. These two laws, karma and reincarnation, sometimes referred to as twin doctrines, work together. They need each other in order to operate properly, as this passage from the Shvetashvatra Upanishad demonstrates. The self takes on a body with desires, attachments, and delusions. The self is born again and again in new bodies to work out the karma of former lives. The embodied self assumes many forms, heavy or light, according to its needs for growth and the deeds of previous lives. This evolution is a divine law. So far, we've seen the commonality of Theosophy and the Upanishads in the fundamental ideas of an absolute impersonal deity and in the law of cycles in its various aspects. Another teaching that the two share is that of the complex nature of man. Both recognize a basic duality in the human being, that is, a higher and a lower self, or as expressed in the Katha Upanishad as follows. In the secret cave of the heart, two are seated by life's fountain. The separate ego drinks of the sweet and bitter stuff, liking the sweet, disliking the bitter, while the Supreme Self drinks sweet and bitter, neither liking this nor disliking that. The ego gropes in darkness, while the self lives in light. Here, what is called the separate ego represents our lower mortal self that we incarnate into for a single life, and that all too often rules our higher, immortal self, here referred to as the Supreme Self, which observes unaffected from above, but must eventually take charge of the lower. But both Theosophy and the Upanishads go beyond duality and show that man is far more complex. They show that within these two selves, lower and higher, are 7 great divisions of our nature. We find this expressed beautifully in this passage from the Katha Upanishad that compares the human being to the components of a chariot. Know the self as lord of the chariot, the body as the chariot itself, the discriminating intellect as the charioteer, and the mind as the rein. The senses, say the wise, are the horses. Selfish desires are the roads they travel. When the self is confused with the body, mind, and senses, they point out, he seems to enjoy pleasure and suffer sorrow. This is a clear statement of the septenary or sevenfold nature of man. Students of Theosophy will recognize what is here called the self as Atma, the discriminating intellect as Buddhi, the mind as Manas, selfish desires as Kama. The senses could be taken as the astral body and the body as the physical body. Prana or life energy is not mentioned here, but appears often in other sections of the Upanishad. An acquaintance with these principles is necessary in order to get a true understanding of what a human being is and what really happens to us during such all-important processes as sleep and waking and birth and death. The third fundamental idea of Theosophy, which is also contained in the Upanishads, states that all beings are engaged in a wondrous journey of evolution. The journeyer, the immortal soul, migrates through the various kingdoms of life, gaining experience, knowledge, powers of all kinds, and eventually reaches the human stage, attaining the power of self-consciousness, and with it, moral responsibility for its actions. Among those in the human kingdom, there are some who have reached a stage of development in which they take their own evolution in hand and consciously direct it to the goal of life. What is that goal? Realization of Brahman, of the self of all. With this comes immortality. Such souls have transcended all karmic ties and are no longer obligated to undergo the cycle of reincarnation. They can accept, instead, the condition of nirvana, which means eternal bliss and peace. This is the end described in the Upanishads. In Theosophy, however, it is stressed that an important choice is involved, and a soul may willingly choose to renounce nirvana and voluntarily enter a physical body again in order to help its struggling younger brothers and sisters, which we heard so wonderfully in a preceding talk about the bodhisattvas and nirmanakayas. In either case, an extremely arduous path needs to be followed in order to attain the goal of self-realization and freedom. What does such a path entail? First, the seeker must strive to renounce his identification with the lower self and switch it to identification with the higher self, the self of all. As the Isha Upanishad says, the Lord is enshrined in the hearts of all. The Lord is the supreme reality. Rejoice in him through renunciation. Covet nothing. All belongs to the Lord. Thus working may you live 100 years. Thus alone will you work in real freedom. Second, the seeker must endeavor to gain control of his various instruments, specifically the senses, the passions, and the mind. As stated in the Katha Upanishad, when the five senses are stilled, when the mind is stilled, when the intellect is stilled, that is called the highest state by the wise. They say yoga is this complete stillness in which one enters the unitive state, never to become separate again. Third, on this path, meditation and repetition of a mantra are important disciplines, as we find here in the Shvetashvatra Upanishad. Be seated with spinal column erect and turn your senses and mind deep within. With the mantra echoing in your heart, cross over the dread sea of birth and death. The path to realization and freedom is succinctly summed up as follows. Train your senses to be obedient. Regulate your activities to lead you to the goal. Hold the reins of your mind as you hold the reins of restive horses. Those who accomplish this monumental task are the rishis, the sages, the masters of wisdom. They watch over the progress of humanity and help wherever they can. They have given us the Upanishads, and they have given us modern theosophy. The words of the Upanishads are thousands and thousands of years old. Those of theosophy, a mere 150. Yet they both speak to us with an undeniable immediacy, potency, and relevance. They answer the same questions we're still asking today. Who am I? Where do I come from? What is the goal of life? Why is there suffering in the world? Why hatred? How achieve a good life? And on and on. We hope we have shown in a small way how both the Upanishads and Theosophy so satisfyingly address these perennial questions. In the words that all the Upanishads close with, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. For those who want to pursue a study of the Upanishads, this is a very incomplete list of a few references. A couple of articles here by William Q. Judge are excellent. There's a book, Selections from the Upanishads and the Tao Te King, put out by all the Theosophical presses. Some books by Eknath Ishwaran. His translation of the selected translations of selected portions of the Upanishads is very readable for the modern reader. And his commentary on the Katha Upanishad very helpful. An excellent overview of the spiritual heritage of India can be found in a book by Swami Prabhavananda. Thank you.